Welcome to the Wild West. This is the War Pony podcast, where we are your trading post for all upcoming productions, connections, and tricks of the trade. I'm your host, Cassidy Honey, bringing West Texas to you. I'm a wife, mom, businesswoman, holistic equine therapist, and team roper. Relax and watch the sunset as we highlight events, consult on business, share knowledge of the industry, and talk to the legends and rising stars of the community. Join the tribe and make War Pony your one-stop shop for all things West Texas. All right, guys, welcome to the War Pony podcast. I'm here today with Madison and Kaylee. We're going to talk a little bit about futurity horses and going down the road as a barrel racer and a mom and kind of what all it looks like.
Hi.
All right. It's definitely a juggle as far as having horses and having kids and everything else. So tell me, what does it look like, just being a mom and also raising these athletes that are high performers and things like that?
To me, it was different. So Madison is way better at just winging it and going and being like, I'm going to go across the country with my 3-year-old. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm never leaving the house without help. So I think that there's definitely different people that do it different ways and it works.
What is your style? Just winging it?
Tatum's pretty independent, and so she hauls good. She doesn't have to have
I like
a movie.
the terminology.
Yeah,
she
hauls good.
She stalls well.
She's good by herself, where she doesn't need a lot of constant contact. I can just turn a little movie on for her when I go to run, and if not, she's on her little pony Leo at the barrel races and rodeos. So, yeah.
And me, on the other hand, I have help. I have my sister. Marcus is there.
You have the entourage that come with you.
I'm like, where's my nanny?
So let's talk a little bit about what it does look like, not only hauling the kids, but hauling the horses. What is your schedule? What is your prep? How does it work being in the futurity world?
The futurity world's a little bit different. I mean, we're typically somewhere for a week at a time. So in the past, me and Kaylee have gone together and our runs are so spread out. She'll watch the kids while I'm getting ready and my horse is ready, and vice versa. When she's running, I'll watch the kids. And sometimes somebody else goes along too. But a futurity is a lot different dynamic than a rodeo, just getting there and only being there for a few hours. We've got stalls, we've got hookups, we're kind of somewhere for a week. So I don't know. I feel like the futurities are a little bit easier with the kids, and you're in a big, nice, safe indoor facility with a lot of other little kids and moms too. So
it's real. Futurity world's more low key, slower lifestyle than rodeo, where it's boom, boom, boom. Everything's on a time crunch.
Yes. Yeah. We get there, a day or two before we run and get settled in, get the horses. So it's a lot more laid back than rodeoing for sure.
What do you prefer? Do you like one versus the other? Or?
I
mean, they're their own animal, but...
Well, I just like the gratitude of training a horse, raising a horse, and seeing, the steps along the way of making a futurity horse. I do like going to rodeos, but the futurity world is just so gratifying to me. And a lot of these are horses that I've raised too, or I've started since they're 2-year-olds and taken them on. So there's just a lot of gratitude that comes from that and taking a horse along that path.
What does that look like for you when you raise your own horses? Do you also sell to the public and train for the public?
I do. I mostly train and raise for myself now. I'm actually fixing to start my first set of 2-year-olds that I've bred their mamas, did all the AI work and everything myself. So I'm fixing to start my first set of 2-year-olds that I've raised out of my own mares, picked the own stallions. Reproduction work to the public is a fine line with a vet board. So no, I typically just do all my own repro work for all my own horses. Now I will sell yearlings and weanlings that I have raised and bred those mares, but I don't work for the public and breed mares for the public.
And Kaylee, what's your program like for the futurity side? Do you raise and train to the public and all those types of things too? Or are you more just kind of independent?
Definitely don't ride for the public. It's just not something that I am into. I also have a job, and so I'm a realtor in my spare time. So I don't have time. I don't have time to dedicate riding somebody's horse. And then I feel guilty. If I'm like, oh, I'm going to put 30 days, and then I don't.
10 days in, you haven't even been able to touch the horse. Yeah, because life happens.
I don't like that.
And I think
So
people can appreciate that because I think the worst thing is whenever you do like send a horse off and they're like, oh, well, we'll either pay per ride or, we're guaranteeing you 20 rides out of the month or whatever. And then you get there and you're like, oh, my horse is fatter here than he was when I left. And you're not that it's a bad thing. I'd much rather my horse come back fat, but I'm not sure if he got rode. And it's just life
Right.
happens. So I think people can appreciate the honesty versus you saying, yeah, let's do it. And then not be able to hold up to the other side of it.
yeah, I just barely have time to do my own stuff. So I don't ride for the public. The fraternity colts that I have this year, one I actually bought that was as a weanling. So I picked her up. She was probably 5 months old, just weaned. And then we raised the other one. I actually ran her mama and had won the Patriot in Fort Worth on that mare. And we bred her. I have a partner on that one. So me and my partner bred her and we broke her, trained her from the ground up. So she's fun.
I've noticed it's really common in the futurity world is the partnerships and things.
It's because it's so expensive.
It's extremely expensive.
Dang
Yes.
expensive. Do you guys collabing on anything as far as horses?
No,
No.
we don't have any.
We
Kinda-
split fuel expenses.
Hey, that's a collaboration, right?
and trailer hookups,
There
when
you
we're
go.
somewhere for a week. But I mean,
Partnership.
yeah,
Yeah.
having somebody like that, as little as splitting fuel go into the Lazy E or splitting the hookup.
Well, these places are not like far and
Yeah.
or close. They're so far, right? Like you guys just were in Wyoming.
Yeah.
And then there was one in Utah. And then there's one in what's that one coming up?
She goes to Breeders'
Memphis.
Challenge.
Memphis.
Fruity
Yeah,
Bubble.
that's
Yeah.
the one. Memphis. And then the Breeders' Challenge is in Fort Worth. So it's not terrible. I mean, it's still a ways, but it's not like these other ones are, 15 plus hour
Oh, yeah.
trips.
Well, plus add some with the toddler.
Yeah. 20
Yeah.
with a kid.
Yeah, for sure. Potty training too.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
at the same time while on the road. Wow, that's gotta be fun.
I remember when we were potty training Teal and we were just driving to Lamesa to the vet. And I think I stopped 17 times on the way to the road because she was so scared to pee on the side of the road. But I was like, what else do you do?
Yeah, yeah. Well, luckily, Crease is a boy, so I bought a little plastic urinal, and so I was like, "Here, pee in this," and he thought it was great fun, and then we just
You got it.
poured it out after. So.
Teal to this day, she still kind of is not sure about it.
But it's also kind of dangerous, you don't want to like stop and
No.
Especially on the side of the road.
Yeah, I mean, it's just-
and have to get
highly
back
traveled.
on and
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah.
and it just you're thinking, oh, it'll only take 5 minutes, and it really does, but it's like the 5 minutes and then getting going again and then stopping
You
again.
lose all the momentum that you were
Yeah.
gaining. To gain it back, it takes time. Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about making a futurity horse. What does that entail? I mean, it's different than your average, jackpot horse and things like that. They're usually younger. And let's talk about the age and
So your futurity year is 4 or 5-year-olds that have never been ran prior to November 15th of that futurity year. So I personally don't run 4-year-old futurity horses. I hold them till they're 5. Mainly because mine are never ready. So a lot of times people will have them ready and they only run 4-year-olds. But I just don't have that luxury. I'm slow.
So I have a question for that. Is obviously 4 and 5-year-olds, it's a big difference, but like maturity wise, do you feel like waiting till they're 5 is kind of better on their mind than it is at 4 years old, or is it just per horse?
I
think it
it's
depends
per
on the
horse.
individual.
Right.
And I think the physical maturity is the bigger thing than the mental
Right.
maturity. A horse has to be able to hold themselves
Mhm.
in a turn. And when they're 3-year-olds and, you can, a lot of injuries, a lot of bad habits, when they just aren't physically strong enough to turn that fast at that rate of speed,
Right.
then being able to hold themselves in a turn going fast is the biggest thing, and not crossfire. Or,
Mhm.
and when you're pushing them too hard, too fast, that's where those issues
Yeah.
do arise.
Right.
So until a horse can maintain a small circle at a high rate of speed, I don't think they're ready to go on to the next step.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think it's crazy. Like if you go to the race world, right? In the horse racing, it's 2-year-olds that are in futurity and it's like they're babies.
Yeah.
See, the thing, they just got
They're
to run in a straight line. Yeah.
But still, we went like last year at the American. I was like, oh my God, they're itty bitty.
They're 2-year-olds.
They're
Yeah.
itty
Yeah.
bitty little guys out there. I feel like their bones are just,
They are. Yeah.
so small.
So basically, you just kind of whatever the horse presented itself, whatever age. If he's one of those freaking natures where he's a 3-year-old and he's running like a 5 or 6-year-old,
Right.
then you kind of like, okay, let's just kind of
Then you do
run with
have a
it.
4-year-old slot horse, you
Right.
know, but that's also a $10,000 entry fee. And, you know, and there's 50 horses that get to run in that 4-year-old slot. And there is a lot of incentives for running a 4-year-old and bigger purses. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at the longevity of the horse.
Good for you. Yeah.
And most of the time, though, now they're really incorporating more of the 5-year-old futurities. And I think that the 4-year-old thing is probably not a thing of the past, but
The juvenile.
I mean, they're really
out.
pushing it more towards
What do the incentives look like in the futurities?
expensive.
They are expensive, but this year my futurity horse has no incentives. Not one single one. Now, some of the races that I've been to, if she would have been in the incentive side pot, we would have left with over $10,000 that weekend. She just has to run an open futurity, which is the horses from all the different classes. So, yes, it is more expensive to pay in, but it pays out so much more. Like, you don't necessarily have to have the fastest horse to get a check if you've got incentives.
And let's elaborate a little bit on like what is an incentive? Like what does that usually entail?
Kind of like a D barrel race.
No,
not
it's,
even nothing.
It's based off of the stallion. So these stallion owners buy in and they have these slots that they buy into. And if you have a foal by one of those stallions, then you pay into that incentive.
Oh,
So
it's
Some are
basically
annually, some are one-time payments, but it takes maintenance to be able to run. And just to name some of the top ones are Pink Buckle, Ruby Buckle.
And Pink Buckle is a yearly nomination, and they
Every
have
year.
one race per year. Ruby has a yearly nomination, and they have 3 races per year. And then you have
Royal Crown.
Royal Crown doesn't
No.
have any nominations, and they have 3. That they have for sure 2 in the States, and then 1 in Canada.
Mhm.
And then
Breeders' Challenge.
Breeders' Challenge
One
has a
time.
one-time nomination, and they have qualifier racers. Breeders is different. They have qualifier racers, qualifying races, and then they have one big finals if you qualified at one of their regional.
Some of the bigger races we go to have literally 10 different incentive side pots you can enter, whether it's Select Stallion Stakes, Future Fortunes, Diamond Classic, Colorado Classic. I mean, there's so many different things but you have to pay into these either annually or one time to be eligible for this side pot incentive
And then you
money.
also pay each time you enter at
Correct.
that jackpot.
Correct. But then you're only running against the horses that are in that particular incentive. But
Oh.
they
At-
pay
At that
brains.
particular event.
Yes.
So they run
correct.
it as a whole.
Yes.
Okay,
So like
gotcha.
if like the race that you're producing tonight, you could have a Diamond Classic side pot here. So all the Diamond Classic eligible horses would pay the $75 Diamond Classic entry fee, but Diamond Classic also puts money in
Yes.
it. So you could win a $500 Diamond Classic check here tonight at just a little 3-bar arena. You know?
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
So it's very specific to the bloodlines. Well, the stallions.
Mhm.
It's all stallion based.
Well, except for Diamond Classic.
well, correct.
because Diamond Classic, you can buy a farm slot. And so, say y'all bought a farm slot.
So what
Anything
is a farm
mare,
slot?
So the 4-6s, we'll just use them as a well-known. They have a farm slot. So any stallion that stands at the 4-6s means that all those babies are eligible for that
So they've
incentive
paid in as their ranch.
as their ranch.
Gotcha.
And then also, isn't it any foal that was born at the 4-6s?
I think
I'll have to
could
look.
be wrong, but I think it's like if you had, say, just an open mare that doesn't have anything to do with one of their stallions, but it's on your ranch, she's also eligible. Could be a gelding, could be anything that you have on your ranch.
That's really neat. Kind of incorporates. And I know that we've seen there's some new ones kicking off. There's like an open horse and a non-incentive horse and things like that. It really seems this is the direction that the industry is kind of gearing towards, is the money aspect. You know, it's definitely not cheap to go down the road. It's definitely not cheap to buy one of these anymore. You know, I remember 10 years ago when I first moved down here, I bought my horse. I was a senior in high school. We paid $10,000 for her, and it was like, oh my gosh! Back in the day, you know, $10,000 was a lot, and it was like, I can imagine. And now, I mean, $10,000 doesn't even get you a baby on the ground.
Yeah.
Like it's
Well, Kaylee's hit the jackpot this year with her too. Just her incentive checks have really added up.
Wow.
And it's made it worth going for her. So, but she's hauling 2 this year that are all in the big incentives. So she can pull checks for multiple incentives at every single race she goes to.
And I've just been lucky. So even if they've had a bad run.
Are you sure it's luck?
Yeah, very lucky. I'd rather be lucky than good.
I mean, more than luck, but these incentives still pay out like in a 2D format.
Yeah, so even if you have like not your best run, like I've had runs that I'm like, oh my gosh, that was terrible, but they still ended up placing in that, like in the 2D, and pulled a good check.
Yeah.
So you're like,
Well, anything is better than nothing when you're
exactly.
They're good
16
checks,
hours away
yeah.
from home too, and how are we going to get back home? I mean, like you said, diesel and traveling
We
expenses.
do it for the love of it.
Yeah.
You know, I try to make it more of a business. Kaylee, not her main career, but it's what she does for fun. It's not her main source of income.
It's just a lifestyle.
It
You
is.
love the lifestyle. That's what you guys
but
do.
you've got to be able to love it and take the stress away from it, and not how are we going to make it back home? Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't go if I was in that type of situation. That's just puts too much stress on the whole
Priorities.
situation.
Yeah.
Being a mom.
Me being a team roper, I don't know how many times I've got a jackpot with no money, and then
hoping to win.
Oh, no.
on a prayer. Yeah,
I would have too much anxiety.
Stressful.
Whenever we first met, I remember Mondo was like, as long as we got checks, baby, we got money. And I thought, oh my God,
it's the true team roper talk.
this is bad. This
Oh,
is bad.
goodness.
So let's talk about your 2 horses. Like, do you have special bloodlines? Did you handpick them, or did you?
So I had always wanted a JL Dash to Heaven, and I actually got really lucky when rather be lucky than good. I got really lucky when I found that mare. At the time, JL was like $7,500 to breed to, and I was like seriously considering it. And Melanie Smith, is it Lawrence?
Now. Is it Solo Select?
Solo
Melanie
Select.
Smith.
Yeah.
Melanie
Yeah.
Smith.
Yeah.
I didn't know her last name now, but so Melanie with Solo Select did one of her random online sales, no reserve,
It was right after the Judd Little, wasn't it?
after his dispersal sale. And I say I won her. Marcus, my husband, says that I bought her, but that's not true. I won her in
With that
auction.
luck.
Yeah.
With your luck,
With
you
my
won
luck,
her.
I won her. And so when she was ready to wean, I went and picked her up, but I got her for less than what I could have bred to him for his
Wow.
stud fee. So I was like, man, I've got to do this, Marcus. I've got to. And he was like, it was over Thanksgiving and we were headed to his brother's house, and he was like, well, then do it. And I'm like, okay. And then I just kind of got sucked into this auction thing. And anyways, I'm glad I did. And then the other one, like I said, we bred her mama. And so, we kind of knew.
Did you have
what
her
she
mom
was.
beforehand? Was her mom special to you?
Yeah, she's the one that I futurity'd on her and was able to buy. She had a partner previous to me that they ran her on the track, and then we went from that to barrels, and I was just the jockey for a long time. And then I was able to buy the other lady's part out and with my partner. So we knew her. My partner actually raised her, so it was out of one of her mares. So we were able to. We pretty much knew everything about her temperament, what she liked, what she didn't, what we thought would cross well on her. So and that's why we picked Freckles to Fame for her.
That's cool.
So
Maddie, do you have any like crazy bloodlines or anything that you're just to
Um,
heart with?
Yes, I mean, I typically pick the mares that have very high speed indexes. I look at the first sire and the second broodmare sire, and I do nicking. Like, I look at the proven crosses. So when I go to buy a mare, I look at the first and the second and the third generation and what cross is good on all those mares. So I believe in mare power.
I think they have so much heart.
Me too.
Yeah, and
They got lots of
I
heart.
won't necessarily, I can't afford a mare that's ran out $100,000 or has produced $100,000. Now, I do have a older Corona Cartel mare that has produced over 300,000, but she's also 24, and I'm able to do embryo transfers and that type thing. So that older mare doesn't have to carry. But I think you have to look at the mare, know it's either proven bloodlines or she's proven herself, and then pick a stallion that complements her, because a stallion will breed Some breed 200 to 300 mares a year, but look at the elite babies by that stallion. They're out of rock solid good mares. So the first thing I look at is a mare.
So you look at speed index as far as stud too,
Or
is it just mare side?
As a stud, like I'd like to see what the individual himself has done. Whether it's he's done well in the barrel pen, he's done well on the track, you know. And then there are some junior stallions. Like one that I've bred to frequently is Justin Cupid. He's an own son of Trey Sace. At this time in my life, I can't spend $9,800 to breed to Trey Sace. So I pick the best son of Trey Sace to breed to.
Gotcha. Just to get
personally
something.
that I think he's one of the better sons of Trey Sace. And then of course you've got the phenomenon Audios Pantalones, you know, and he's a phenomenal son of Trey Sace too.
Gotcha.
So if I can't afford necessarily to breed to the stallion itself, I will pick the junior stallion that I think is the best next option.
What about conformation? I mean, is that something you're also looking at?
Yes, I love a big shoulder. I love a big gaskin, and then I just love
like that old, like kind of AQH8, just big,
short back. You know,
short back, long
underneath. Very
underneath.
balanced. Yes, very balanced. Big shoulder, big hip, big gaskin, short back are typically what I look for. So, but yeah, every decision I make is around the mare.
That's cool. I did not know that. It's almost like you can nowadays you can almost pinpoint exactly what you want.
Yeah. So if you're looking at a catalog pedigree, like at a big sale for horses, I don't even look at the stallion at first. I go and look at the mare first before I ever look at I just look at the dam side before I ever see who the sire is. It means a lot to me.
Meanwhile, I call you because I have no idea how to even transfer papers over to AQH. I don't know if I've ever even bought a horse off papers. We bought Frenchie just because she was at a Frenchman's Guy, and I was like, oh, that sounds good. I don't know. I'm not even saying I'd ever own another one. It's taken her a long time to mature. That's for sure.
That's certain bloodlines have certain temperaments too.
Absolutely.
So, that's just there's lots of different factors you take in consideration.
I just go to the ranch and I say, oh, that one looks good. I'll take it.
Like it's confirmation.
Papers, I like it.
Yeah.
It's in my budget. No,
That's me. I buy off my budget.
It really has become a science. I think it's a breeding game too, and it's not only a money game, but like you said, it's knowing how to look at things to put the best two together. You know, maybe not because of I like this one for this and this one for that. Oh, they're going to make a good baby, but the proven side, because you know you really, like Manda said, you can pretty much piece anything you want together nowadays with like the embryos and the ICSI and all the other things that are out there. We dipped our toes into it a little bit this year. Whenever we lost Prada, you know, we try to harvest her ovaries, and then I learned in 72 hours. One, I've never even attempted to breed a horse before, so in 72 hours, I learned about oocytes. I learned about ICSI, however you say it. I don't even know.
Yeah.
And like all of these different things, like how do you even pick a reset mare? You know,
that was
it's
a big
the one. That's
that
the best candidate for when if y'all were able to get an embryo.
And we actually hit up Melanie, and it was really great. Like Select, they have it going over there. They had like 15 different mares, depending on the day that little embryo was at its
all in cycle.
I don't know, was it like 8 days after it like starts being in the petri? I don't even know. I was just like, this was wild.
Holy cow.
I mean, we shot our shot. You know, I think that everything happens for a reason, but it is a whole world. That breeding side of things. So,
well, and just as far as the money goes, heck, before that baby even hit the ground, we were 20 grand deep, and it was like, holy cow.
It's crazy.
Like,
people always say like, oh, I'm going to breed them because it'll be cheaper. But it's definitely, I mean, I think if you have the mare and you have a reasonable stud and she can carry on her own, then you probably are a little bit ahead of the game. But people don't care that you spent $20,000 to get that baby on the ground. At the end of the day,
and that's not even guaranteeing a
3
healthy
times
baby.
the stud fee
is the normal going rate.
And that's the insurable rate too.
So it does make it harder sometimes. So people that, you know, say I'm going to get into breeding because it's going to be cheaper or whatever, it's usually a pretty good wake-up call that
we dropped quite a bit this year on our attempts, and we came out with nothing twice.
Oh yeah.
So, well, that I much rather would go buy something that I know I'm going
proven.
to get.
Yeah, and it's proven too, because even now a lot of people will be like, well, I want to buy this colt, but then I'm going to send it to somebody to train because I'm going to do a payment plan. But then what if that horse doesn't prove himself?
Or what if you don't even fit the horse after the training
Absolutely.
program? You know,
Well, a lot of times with babies, you don't know if they're going to come out with a crooked front leg. And at least if you are, if you're like, okay, I want to get into the futurity world, then you can save for 2 or 3 years and go buy yourself a 3-year-old that you know their color, you know that it's the gender that you want.
No major injuries.
You can see the confirmation. You can pretty much buy what you want versus spending that money and
keeping it alive
the
for
3 years to
years.
feed it, the vet care, the hay, the hay and care for the mare for over 2 years, pretty much. By the time you get the mare bred and then have the baby, so
my highest vet bills are on my yearlings and 2-year-olds. Those
they're crazy.
they hurt
they try to
themselves.
die
Yeah,
all the time.
I've just had one break its leg this year that had to have a surgery. It's just
and you're praying like, okay, by the time this is 10, is it still going to be good?
Oh yeah, but they hurt themselves. I don't have the luxury of padded box stalls, and they're out and turned out, and for the longest time they're just out on the ranch being a horse.
They're horses, yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into it. The safer bet is definitely picking your prospect and buying it when it's time to start.
But there is something to be said about breeding, raising, and training your own. It is a very gratifying.
Yes.
So if you can do it and it's something that you want to do,
Absolutely.
and you're not really necessarily worried about, is it going to be a mare or a gelding?
The outcome, yeah.
But it's just such a gamble. And I'm in a place where I do my own reproduction. So I am able to absorb a lot of those costs. But for me to tell you that it's a smart business move to go buy 3 brood mares and try to get 3 foals on the ground next year, you're probably going to have 20,000 plus, and hopefully 2 of those mares end up having babies.
If I was to ever get into it, I'd want those. I just want to own the reset mares.
They're expensive.
That right there.
You just got to have about 400 acres to turn them all out on. Yeah.
When we were quoted, granted the situation we were in, we were taking what we could get, right? But I thought, like, oh my gosh.
The amount of money for a recip, it was holy. That's
the part y'all don't see on the backside is culling through those mares and what is a good recip.
Oh, you got to go through 100 to get 20, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, from reproduction exams, and you typically want a mare that's had 1 or 2 babies prior, because recip mares aren't carrying just any. They're typically is a high dollar mare and a high dollar stallion, so you want an elite recip mare.
Yeah, a lot of people think I'll just get me a mare. No big deal. No.
And then getting one mare, the donor mare. So that would be the mare that you're flushing or breeding. To get one donor mare and one recip mare is unrealistic. You need 3 mares for every donor. So that's why these recip farms have so many recipient mares.
Because you have to implant that embryo within a certain point of the other mare cycle.
Yeah, I think when we were doing all of it was 8 days. It had to be on the 8th day. They had to be in their 8th day of cycle and 8th day of the embryo being matured. And I mean, it's a whole thing.
There's a window for the donor and the recip for it to all work.
Do you guys also, sell to the public? I know we talked a little bit about training for the public, but what does it look like? Do you help people buy horses and sell horses, or what are your thoughts on that?
I've sold everything from finished horses to yearlings. I've sold quite a few that have gone on to junior high school and high school level. And then I've also sold a lot of yearlings that I have raised.
I like to leave that to Marcus because I'm very much an introvert and he will talk to anybody. And so to me, I do not like to deal with the questions and it's like, here, this is the horse. This is what he is.
Here's what he is.
You either like him or you don't. And Marcus is much more.
He's a salesman.
Yeah, very much so.
Got the customer service.
Yes.
I personally don't like selling the open and the finished horses. It just opens a whole nother can of worms. Like telling, this is how this horse needs to be cared for, ridden, rode. And having that horse, the horse being the individual itself, replicate the same environment and being rode the same way, and then throwing a kid in the mix too. Sometimes it's a recipe for disaster. And at the end of the day, sometimes it hurts our name because we know the horse and the individual and what it's capable of. But how do we know what that horse went through at its next home, you know?
Yeah, as
So
a trainer,
it's-
I'm sure it's hard
yeah,
for you to just
it's,
let go of a horse to see what's going to happen.
it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when that horse isn't performing for the next rider, was it an inexperienced thing? Was it a lack of vet work, lack of nutrition? And it always ends up falling back on who sold them
The
that
seller.
horse.
Well, it
and
wasn't
that,
that. It was your fault.
right. Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, and like we told you, we don't think it's a good fit for this reason. You know, a novice horse and a novice rider is never the best situation.
Mix, yeah.
And sometimes
And I mean, understanding people's budgets too. You know, I mean, you
Yes.
do have to be aware, you know, like this is not a hobby. You know, this is something that if you're going to get into it, I mean, even for a beginning, like you're spending a lot of money, you know, and it's not that.
And sometimes that $10,000 budget can only buy a 5-year-old that's 75% of the way finished, when that $10,000 really needed to buy a 22-year-old that needs its hocks injected,
Amen.
needed maintenance, and is so
Yeah.
rock solid and safe.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said that, you know, a horse will teach so much more than any trainer or any other human could ever teach you.
For sure.
Like, you need that one horse in your life that just carries you and builds your confidence and has your back. You know, that's going to let you get to that next horse. And I think that gets mixed over a lot because, you know, you see a horse running and, oh, I want that one. It's the
For
fastest one. Or,
But
oh,
you don't
this
know
one's
what goes
pretty.
into
And,
that. You know,
you know, you're just,
Well, also too, a lot of people think, well, the more expensive the horse, the better the horse, right? And yes, that is true up to a point,
Right.
but your rider has to fit that.
yeah, the horse is
Excalibur
an
of the horse.
individual, and the rider is
Right.
an
And a lot of what the
individual.
public does is they overlook the older horses. Well, I don't want an old horse.
That's the best thing
Those are
you
the
could
best
ever
ones.
do for your
I'd rather
kid.
have a pen full of veterans than a bunch of babies on the ground,
Absolutely.
right? Because in the veterans, you don't have to give them all that extra riding and treatment and all that other stuff. Let me rephrase that. As far as treatment goes, yes, they need more maintenance, but
don't be afraid of maintenance. Right?
exactly, don't be afraid. I mean, injections don't hurt. They inject all the time. They help. They improve performance. They improve everything. But I think the public overlooks a lot of veterans more than anything.
And I love an older horse. I love not being, you know, with my job and my schedule. Sometimes I may be a lot more busier during the week. I don't want to have a horse that I have to ride every single day, or I'm going to go to a jackpot and they're not going to pay attention, or they're not going to do something because I didn't get to ride them.
Right.
I
Yeah.
want one that if I'm busy during the week, I can go to a jackpot and enjoy it and have fun, and I don't have to worry about them because they're going to go and do their job no matter what.
Right.
I think just important too is when you have kids, it changes your entire outlook on everything.
Absolutely.
You know, I used to think I was pretty fearless and, oh, it's fine. It's a horse. No, I'm telling you, like, Teal goes outside and I am anxiety level 1,000. I can't, like, there's just so many things that could go wrong so quick. And I also think that that's just so important when you are buying a horse, no matter what age or what caliber, whatever is, think about your environment. Think about what you're bringing it home to. You know, like you said too earlier, is like what changed from your house to their house that horse isn't going to perform different. You know, I think that you need to keep that in your mind when you're buying a horse. This is how horse is performing under these circumstances. So I think it's important to keep it that way.
Well, and also too, like as a roping standpoint, when you're looking for horses, you have 30,000 as a budget to buy, right? So people want to go buy that $30,000 horse. I have that money. Let's go buy it. Well, why don't you find the horse that you win off of?
For sure.
Even if it
whether
costs you
it's 10
$1,500 and you win. I had a mare that I paid $1,500 for, and I win $200,000 on her.
Absolutely.
I mean, find what works for you.
Absolutely.
And if you're worried about winning, looking good doesn't win you nothing. So if your horse wants to stop on their front end and turn the barrel, but you still win first every time, who cares, right? Yeah. A lot of people get caught up in the nice, flashy horses. And I'm not taking that away from futurity. That's where all the nice and flashy horses are.
But you also have different levels of riders.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to get at.
Like,
Yeah.
they're still young. You still don't typically get your green. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they do have some sort of like amateur futurity
incentives.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
like her and I both are eligible to run in the amateur side pods.
Yeah.
Well, I am not, because you have to own the horse that you're running. Like, it can't be owned by somebody else. And my
Yeah.
futurity horse that I'm running this year is owned by somebody else. So I can't run in that amateur side pot. It's either you're capped at like you've won 30,000 or less in professional barrel race earnings, and you don't train for the public. But yes, there is an amateur
It
incentive.
kind of opens it up a little bit, but I think it's just, it's important just to know what is going to be the best fit for you and the best fit for the horse. It's also not fair to the horse to be slapped on with something that horse isn't ready for. You got to think of both parties for sure. I mean, your team effort out there. So we've talked about, some incentives. We talked about breeding. We've talked about futurity. Let's talk about what does it take to get to the futurities? Like, what does your routines look like at home? Do you guys have schedules as far as when you ride your horses, how you ride your horses?
How long out do you take to before futurity? What's the prep work? Like, is it 3 months before? Is it a month
We
before?
talked about the November the 15th.
That's when they make their first run, whether it's their first run as their 4-year-old year or their first run for their 5-year-old year. But me, I let the individual tell me. Now, I'm very adamant about getting my horses broke and very gentle because I feel like the more user friendly the horse is, you're not working on getting your horse broke while you're patterning it. So I'm very, very adamant on getting a very, very broke, gentle horse. So when I do go to show the horse the pattern,
start that around 3 years old.
I typically don't start patterning one till they're almost 4.
But you're getting them broke and gentle.
Just using them on the ranch, hauling them to the barrel races, taking them and tying them out, getting them to load on the trailer, getting them used to the surroundings. So when you are there and you start your exhibitions, they've been doing this for a year and a half, 2 years. So the biggest obstacle is getting them feeling safe and confident away from home. And then I think everything just bam, bam, bam. One of hers this year, she just barely started hauling and exhibitioning Percy less than 6 months before she ever entered her. And she
just took to it. It's just her though.
Yeah.
But I think it just depends on the horse. Like, I mean, there's a part of me that I've rode enough and I've gone to enough that I know what horses are going to fit me and not fit me. And I'm not afraid to cut my losses and get rid of one or make Marcus ride one and team rope off of it or do something else. Yeah, Marcus, the guinea pig. But to me, a good horse is going to be good from the beginning. You may have a few little issues, but I know within 10 or 15 days if that horse is going to make it on the pattern or not. And that's just
so stop you right there. Is 10 to 15 days, is that for you or is that for the public?
That's for me.
Okay.
She doesn't do the public.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
And that's for me, like, to know if they're going to fit what I want.
What you're looking for.
Not necessarily.
Gotcha.
Not saying that it's not going to make a barrel horse for somebody else, but it's not going to have that feel that I want or be. I'm also very unlenient on having to be easy. I don't have enough time for me to have to lope you an hour before we get to work. So I need a horse that's ready to go to work when I get on him. And I can tell that pretty quick within my training of like, this is one that I want to continue on and try to futurity with, or this is going to be a horse at some point, but not a futurity horse for me.
It's a good day work for 6 months with somebody else.
So when I say 15 days to make a barrel horse, that's just to know if I'm going to put the work into
if
it
you want to
continue on.
Absolutely.
And it happens fast for me.
What does your week to week look like? Getting ready for the futurities. Do you have a certain schedule? Are you, do you pattern these horses a lot? I mean, something I've always been told my whole life was, you don't run their legs off before the event. You have to get them ready. Yes. But what does that look like for you?
So I think that just varies from trainer to trainer. I was reading on Facebook that this very well-known trainer was like, I work on horses every day. And I'm like, oh God, that sounds like terrible.
It's a lot of work.
So I personally don't do that. I get them to a point where I can go and take an exhibition them. And then I stop working them at home unless problems start arising when I'm exhibitioning them. So I usually take the road less traveled and I don't try to make issues that aren't there. And I feel like sometimes if you keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it, they get bored, they get sore, they
hate their job.
They can come into these issues. Some horses need it, but those are the ones that I weed out because they don't fit my program. And there's nothing wrong with a horse that needs that extra work and that extra time and all of the extra time from you to put into him. They're going to make nice horses too. But for me and where I'm at with a toddler and a job, those horses don't fit me.
Yeah, all the things. You know what I mean? You're doing all
those
the things
just have to go to somebody else.
Marcus would love her calling him your wife.
I was actually referring to Kaylee, like you're a wife.
That's funny.
God, Marcus.
Sorry, bro.
What did Marcus
love you, bro?
Yeah.
What did he tell you when I was talking to you the other day? He said, "Oh, she loves me" or something.
Yeah.
Right? Shout out to Marcus. Like,
I think it all goes back to the certain feel that we have of what Kaylee's describing. We all are going to have a different feel in the way that we want a horse to react to the buttons that we have. And if a horse isn't soft where I want to be soft, or like I'm big on using my legs and my feet more than using my hands. Like I like to do very minimal with my hands. And if I can feel early on that you're really going to have to keep after this horse being soft in the face and responsive in my hand, I don't get along with those. So I want something that I can just keep in my hand, drop them, and they work. And if they can't, I don't want them, you know.
Well, and that's why there's so many trainers.
Yeah.
There's a lot to pick from.
if you watch the horses running, not one horse runs the same way.
Right. No.
There's all different types and things.
And there's certain styles that I know I get along with, and there's certain that I can't pull on one. You know, I know I can't. And a lot of that comes into training too, if you start them. And her and Marcus start most of theirs. I start most of mine. But you put these buttons, instill these buttons in them that you know you're going to need when you're going fast.
Yeah.
So, and there's some individuals that you can't put those buttons in them that you want, you know.
So what do you think, like, the difference between, like, when do you know you have a rodeo horse versus a jackpot horse? And, you know, there are those unicorns that can do both.
I think Fox, if I'm running my futurity horse at a rodeo tonight, I think when you're at the point where you send them in the alley and they are looking for that first barrel, nothing else distracts them, and they don't need exhibitions, essentially. Like, you can take them in, they work, they don't booger at something on the fence. You know, when you go up the alley, they mean business. I think that's when you're in a good spot to start going to some rodeos.
Because from what I've seen, and I'm not into the whole futurity thing, like, knee deep here, but there's not a lot that also go in rodeo. I think a lot of them kind of do one or kind of do the other. And
there's several that are doing both, and doing well at both. So Lipstick and Stilettos is a really super nice 4-year-old this year. She's been winning futurities and pro rodeos. Wow. So she's just,
and I mean, it all goes back to the horse. You know?
And I know Adios
was raised and trained by, you know, but he's another one that was
I know Adios
or she bought when he was
doing,
you know,
she placed at her first pro rodeo.
Yeah.
So I think it just all depends on the individual horse.
And that's in their mindset. If you've got hands on a baby from the time that they're on the ground and they've been exposed to a lot of things, you're going to have a horse that can handle a lot, whether it's a futurity horse or, you know, a rodeo horse. Just exposing them and handling them from an early time on, I think
the biggest thing about the difference between like a futurity horse and a rodeo horse is mainly just 9 times out of 10 when we go to the futurities, the ground is really good. And so it's not really a factor. Versus sometimes when you go to these rodeos,
they're running on cement.
I mean, it's hard, it's deep, it's
not
wet, it
from barrel to
rains.
barrel.
It's just different. And so I think that's where just the maturity of it comes in. And that the only reason that they get used to that is because you take
experience.
I remember, years and years ago at our little hometown rodeo, I don't even know if I was like 10 yet, but I was riding this little mare and they had the clown come out of the arena and it had like this little skateboard thing and there was fireworks and all sorts. And my horse refused. She would not go in the arena at all. Like, and I think that you have to prepare them for those types of things. Like,
sure,
a rodeo is a whole different thing. You know, they have so much going on from a jackpot.
Yeah.
You know, you get a little bit of music at a jackpot, maybe a shadow in the arena.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
So going down the road, like traveling together, you know, what are your favorite snacks going down the road?
Or what's your favorite
It's who's
places
going to
to
hit next on the Netflix next episode. I'm like, it's
Next
your
episode
turn.
of Bluey.
Yeah.
It's your dad. Who's getting juice this time? Honestly, we drove the last time we went to Guthrie and back. I don't think we ever turned the radio on. once.
Yeah, we were watching Blippi and
Oh,
We do the same thing. We have a DVD player in the truck.
Yeah.
Jill likes to watch it, and that's all we listen
But
to.
you catch yourself starting to sing that now.
Yeah. Oh
Good.
yeah, I
Those
know
are the
all the
new,
songs
like,
of the
pump up
excavator.
jams.
So
Oh yeah.
What I'll do is I'll get in the settings and I'll put all the sound in the back
Oh yeah.
and over in the back corner where Till's at,
Yeah.
so that she hears it, and then Cass and I just talk the whole time.
For sure. Yeah.
So when I was a little bit younger and, was in college and rodeoing and stuff a lot, my go-to was a sugar-free Red Bull and a Rice Krispie treat. And you just weren't rodeoing if you didn't have one of those.
Yeah.
But now if I drink a Red Bull past 2, I'm just
Up
I'm
all
not getting
night.
up. I'm not going to
Yeah.
sleep. It's like crazy.
We've got the applesauce packs that we
There
all
you go.
you
And the
know,
juice
Green
boxes.
cheese.
string cheese, applesauce,
Fruit snacks.
Yeah,
fruit snacks.
snacks.
But we're prepped for the road these days. It's not going in and getting a Red Bull and
Yeah.
all soaps, Jimmy. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh,
we're,
those are the
Yeah.
best.
we're ready before we ever hit the road. So life looks a lot different now.
No one else can fit in the truck when y'all go, but hey, you're ready.
Exactly. 2 car seats, 2 kids.
A
And
dog sometimes.
Yeah, wild little dog. So
Wouldn't be a rodeo without a dog.
yeah,
Actually, wouldn't be a barrel race without a little dog.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun.
he's a really bad dog though, so he doesn't get to come that much.
Walter.
So it does take a lot to go down the road. Not only is it traveling and money and horses and time and all those types of things, but what does it look like for your horse? What does it look like to get your horse prepared to go down the road?
Veterinary wise.
I think anytime a problem arises that's unexplainable, like maybe not being as snappy on the barrel or, carrying head differently, I'm the first person to go to the vet because I want to make sure my horse isn't in pain. And if they do test positive to certain things, I will begin maintenance on that horse, and then we start, hopefully it's every 6 months and maybe never again. Maybe they're just a little sore and there was something that could have helped. But anytime something happens that's unexplainable, I go to the vet. But I won't say that I routinely start injecting or do this because I do it on all of them. I let the horse tell me when it's time to go to the vet.
I think that's really important throughout this whole conversation is like, it is the horse. Everything is going to be different depending on the horse. There is not one shoe size fits all. It is all listening to the animal that you are a team with, that you're competing with. That's going to tell you so much, from the get-go, from buying it to riding it, to the vet work, to is it ready to be entered, from all of it it's listening to the animal.
Well, it's almost like the way I see it in my head is you're kind of like a driver in a race car. If something's happening in that race car, you've been in that race car so much that you can hear if the engine is ticking a little bit different or if it's not revving up a certain way or certain things. That's the way that I see it as you as a rider, how you have to let your horse talk to you on those things.
So for me, on my older open horses, I usually don't go to the vet unless I feel like I'm having an issue. And again, that just goes from me being around them and knowing them. With my futurity colts, it's been a little bit different this year because after any of the big futurities like Ruby Buckle or Royal Crown, I generally take them a week or 2 after and just kind of have them gone through just to make sure everything's still good, still feeling good, because I know that I have a lot of invested coming up in those races. So I don't want to be surprised when I get there. So I've been kind of more forward thinking on that and trying to stay ahead of any issues that might
Trying
arise.
to be proactive versus reactive.
Yes.
Yeah,
And that's
really
kind
good
of just
input.
different than like, my good horse that I rodeo off of. I don't routinely take her unless I feel her off.
Mm-hmm.
But with my futurity colts, I'm kind of like,
Let's catch it before.
I want to
And I
make
think
sure.
that kind of goes to what you said too in the beginning, Madison, is like, you don't want them to feel some sort of way where they stop working or they stop, because they are still babies, and they will compensate and they will do things different. And, that is very important. That's a really good outlook on it.
The individual or the 2 futurity horses Kaylee's talking about, she's pretty much had a schedule, and she knows like she's got Breeders' Challenge coming up. Then she's going to have Ruby coming up. She's got these races where she can go win 50,000 plus. And, it's worth
It's a
putting
lot
the
of money
little,
on the line.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's worth putting the extra time in and double checking, and then instead of getting there and your horse not working, and there was something there that you could have known about. So I agree
And
with
usually
that
it's little
too.
things.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of little things. And like, so my two horses are really a lot different. Boom's really laid back as far as like at the trailer and in the stall. She doesn't really fret about much. But Percy, she's more laid back at like home, but when you haul her, she's like crazy. The first time I took her, I was like, oh my God, what's going on here? So it's been little things like I got stall fronts for her. Her being able to stick her head out of the stall. She went from trying to climb out of the stall to being like, okay, I can do this. So I think it's just trial and error and figuring out, how to make them comfortable when you're there.
I think a big thing that goes on training, and I mean, we've been guilty of it, is you don't think when you leave your house of all the different things that can happen. We were in Stephenville, and Mondo was roping, and Prada never had been in one of those 10 by 10 stalls.
Right.
We had to dally off to another horse to drag, like literally put her in the stall.
And then
it
she leaped.
like
And-
she was
Yeah.
terrified, and we didn't think about it beforehand. Like, hey, let's stall break a horse, Like she didn't like tighter spaces. That was kind of her quirk, but we could not hardly stall her. And in Stephenville at that time, it was stall only. There is zero tying
Right.
out. There is zero of these things. Like, so I think that's another important thing to think about is when you are expoing, and getting that horse ready for these things is what does that mean outside of the arena also? I think that goes a little unnoticed. Or the traveling, like we talked about in the beginning, you travel 15, 16 plus hours.
I felt like that was one of the weak links in my training, and it was my horses are always turned out. They either are in a big pen, a lot, or they're in pasture. And so I actually this year with my futurity colts, anytime that we had a 2-day barrel race, even if it was in Andrews, I would rent a stall and keep them over there overnight, just to kind of get them ready for that. And like I said, Percy, she was not easy to stall. She was bad. And so that's where it was like, okay, I got to get these stall gates. Or, okay, I got to do this. And
But that could like make or break your whole run the next day too.
yeah, the
sure.
anxiety on them for not
They're not-
hauling good
yeah.
is
They're
really hard
tired,
on
they're
them.
not getting rest, and there's a lot that goes into it.
So I spent a couple $100 before I even entered a futurity, just putting them in stalls at a barrel race or a jackpot.
So now you know why barrel horses are so expensive. It's all the stall money you got to put
Oh my
into
gosh,
it.
stalls are expensive, and shavings, they're usually $10 a
Yeah.
bag when you
And,
get
like,
there.
I pack them if I can.
Yeah, if you can.
If they allow you
If
to,
you
yeah.
can. Yeah.
So stalls
mean-
are definitely, and I know that you can get mats, and one of my friends hauled with a stall mat the other day, and I was like, ooh, I thought I'd like this better than I thought I would, because I thought
Yeah.
they'd be kind of gross, you
Yeah.
know?
Shout out Ashley Brown, stall mats.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that they would be gross, and she had them, and she literally just like whipped it out and rolled it up, and I was like, okay, well maybe I need one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
they are
They're
pretty
handy.
cool. Even
Yeah.
like to stand on. if
My
you're-
shoer loves
Yeah.
it. Yeah. He has to trim the mini. He like rolls it out and he's like, oh, my knees.
Yeah.
You know?
So I do think that those are, tools that you can have. So
I think there's a lot of aspects that go into it other than just making a run. You know,
Oh
you
my
can
gosh.
watch so much, but I don't think you really realize the depth of it.
So when you're at a futurity or away from home for a week, and I think one of the biggest things that goes into it is keeping that horse happy while
Mhm.
you're there. So
Mhm.
yeah, and then that leads into like, do you need to have Zestera, or do you need to
Yeah.
have sucralfate, or do you need to have, something to help with their
Ulcers,
nerves, or
yeah.
ulcer guard, or there's a
the
ton of things
pharmaceutical
that you
list that
can.
can come with it.
On
do or
the
not do.
electrolytes. And so when you guys leave, do you guys put electrolytes in a few days before y'all leave town? Just to
have
kind
a
of make
prep
sure
that
that
you
they're
kinda
kind of
do?
drinking
I
when they're
start
on the
them on a
road?
probiotic always.
Yeah.
Just I feel like that helps with gut health. And I do run on Lasix, so I routinely give electrolytes.
Because I know, like for us, when we are going out of town about 2 days prior, we put little electrolytes just so that
Some
they can kind
Prevacox.
of keep
yeah,
drinking.
it's something. Well, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We got the older crowd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, with
We got the
younger
veterans
crew,
at
I
the
try
house.
not to do that.
Yeah.
But mine are routinely on electrolytes, the ones that I run on Lasix. So,
Yeah.
but probiotics, I start the week I know we're going somewhere.
We
And
do
this
the
time
same.
of year, they're on a probiotic all the
Mhm.
time.
It's hot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just because we're hauling a lot right now, so they're on a probiotic pretty much regularly.
Well, it leads us to our ending question. Why is West Texas special to you guys?
Well, this is where my family is. And so I love being able to raise my kid with his grandma and my sister. I see him every day. We
Your
work out
whole
of my
tribe
mom's
that comes with you, your
office.
entourage.
Yes. So it's like I can call my sister and be like, hey, I want to go to this rodeo. Can you go with me? And she'll come with me. And so, or my mom, I want to go to a jackpot and Marcus is wanting to go to a team roping. Can you watch Crease? And so I can just drop him off and I don't have to worry about it. And so, I just like that support that I have here. And I don't necessarily love the weather as
Well, it's
sweat
not
is
the
rolling
scenery.
down my legs, but it's nice.
Yeah, the climate and the weather is less than ideal. I grew up in North Carolina. I've been out here since 2012. I had a rodeo
you're a
scholarship.
transient.
Yep. And so I grew up where it's green and grass
We
and
came here the
rolling
same year. I didn't know
hills
that.
and water, ocean, lakes, you name it. But one thing that I love about here, and I will never be able to take this from West Texas, is the amount of knowledge that I've learned. I've spent years on ranches, managed ranch, spouses managed ranches, and just being around really, really good horsemen. You can make a barrel horse wherever, but learning the small things that go into making a good horse, I've learned that out here and have been lucky to be around some really, really good horsemen. And they've all been from West Texas. So it's really cool to me. And I'll always appreciate that from West Texas.
That's awesome. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you guys taking time. I know y'all are fixing to jump in the trailer and head out to go to a rodeo. So we wish you the best of luck. And thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge and everything else that comes with it.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, y'all stay tuned.
Thank you for listening to the War Pony Podcast. If you have a story to tell or want to be a sponsored ad on our podcast, you can always contact us at Cassidy@warpony.co. That is CASSIDY @warpony.co. Or you can always find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at War Pony Co.